Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Just really want to start off by asking, when did your love of sport, when did it take place for you? What sort of age? What was the circumstances?
Pretty young, because my grandparents were very liberal. They liked cricket, and they engaged. They told us that we could go out and play. I mean, I was born back in the time when outdoors was what it was. We never had a lot of things to do. We had television sets. I'm not going to tell you when I was born, anyway. But we played a lot. But then cricket, which was a big game in Jamaica, I remember in 1973 when India toured the West Indies. Of course, we all packed up in that Morris Oxford and went to Sabina Park. And then my father went to the School of Agriculture in Jamaica, and he played cricket for his parish, played for school, and it took off. My mom was a scorer of the game. That's how they met. And so I just took it on. I liked watching, I liked following commentary and mimicking commentators. So I started that way. And then as I got older, I danced, played netball and so on. So I've been in it almost from baby stage.
Okay. And I've read up about your love of volleyball as well, so you've obviously participated as well.
Oh yeah, I played college in Jamaica. Played for Jamaica for a short while, but I also played top club in Jamaica, which we toured extensively. And I got a volleyball scholarship and went to the United States. Played Division II, which is pretty competitive in the New York area, and came back home, played for a while, became president, sat on several committees internationally. Then I left it and got into sport development. I go back from time to time. I still play around, but volleyball is a big part of my life.
And like so many of us, sport is obviously in the blood, because obviously you went into the media as well and made a success of that. Explain a little bit about that.
Okay, as I told you, I was always interested in, doing commentary and stuff. But when I went to community college in Jamaica, you're doing A-level, so there's almost 1 year free. And I thought, my mom says, don't waste my money, find something to do. So I became interested in finding a job. When I went to teachers college, I said, why is it that I have to be bothering my parents for money all the time? So I wrote a nice article on Sports Day at the college's Micro College in Kingston, and I sent it to the Gleaner, and Tony Becker employed me almost immediately. That was 1987. So I've been writing and doing broadcasting consistently from 1987.
And obviously you touched on the business of sport quite literally there. All those experiences put you in a good position to actually set up the business of sport, your vehicle there. You're in London obviously for next week's forum. Just explain a little bit about the forum for us and what you see happening there.
Well, what I anticipate from the Caribbean export side is that they want to see it as, one, a viable export, two, what are the things that can go into it to make it a real business. We all see, you're talking about £9 billion to host the Olympics, major games and what are the elements, but how do the athletes really benefit? There's a lot of restrictions, but we're developing a lot more elite athletes. More and more people are making sports a business. And as a result of that, how can we help them to develop an industry? The Caribbean is a sporting destination. And I think it is critical at this time and beyond that the Caribbean gets a template together to ensure that their athletes can prosper. I mean, I've heard figures, for example, in track and field, where the U.S. athletes earn less than $15,000 a year. At least half of them. That's incredible. You can't live off that. And so as a result, it's critical that we put together a package that can be monetized to make it economically viable for athletes.
I mean, you're obviously the publicist for the fastest man in the world. Probably without question the single biggest profile in sport. Does that help you with the forum next week? Does that help you get attention? Does that help you sell what you're trying to sell as such?
It does, absolutely. I think what has happened over time, because he's a track and field athlete, I think it has developed over time. If he was a basketball or a football star, I could imagine it would have been much bigger before, but I think because of the issues surrounding track and field and so on, it's becoming more believable. Let's say, track and field has been dogged by drugs, and even the anti-doping committee has really had issues with athletes repeating great feats and so on. I think though that it's getting better because the athletes are dedicating their times to it, and I think that because of the measures put in place and with the numerous amount of testing, I think the systems are working better. So track and field is becoming a viable sport. Unfortunately, it's only big during the time of the Olympics, but I think during the World Championships and with the Golden League, Diamond League meets, I think more and more people, certainly after London, I think track and field will just expand tremendously.
How did your working relationship with Usain come about?
Oh, I think it's a case of being in the right place at the right time. I was at a local, very popular track meet in Kingston called the Gibson Relays. His business manager, Norman Peart, came to me and said, I want to talk to you. I had no idea what he was doing. 2 weeks later, I did a project for him. He was donating fire safety equipment to schools, and I just did some PR stuff for him. And, we kept going back and forth. Nothing major. Then Usain had an accident, April of 2009. And Norman says, I can't handle this by myself. Would you help? I said, sure. I said, I just need to talk to Usain to find out exactly what happened. We did. He didn't compete at the May Games that year, but it was also the year he broke a significant amount of records. And I think officially we got together in June. So it was an, easy transition, no flares, no fuss, just went in. And 3.5 years later, I'm still around, still here, bursting at the seams with requests.
I was going to say, because you're coming over very calm about it, but he's the biggest man in the world, isn't he?
Yes.
That's exciting for you, surely.
Yeah, 1,500 emails a week asking for from an autograph to a picture with him to having him somewhere all over the world. I mean, everybody. The king of Bhutan invited us.
I was going to say, I would imagine that every day is different in terms of Usain and requests.
We got one of the most funny ones was a little girl sending a letter. She's 9. She's from UK too. She has her dog and she wants her dog to race Usain. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that was funny. I mean, it happened a day we were having tremendous issues with responding back and forth, if he was injured, if he wasn't injured. And that letter just kind of just said, okay guys, life is really normal when you think about it. I posted it on Facebook and we got like 200,000 comments on his Facebook page. So little things like that.
I mean, we've met him a few times, obviously. He comes over as a very fun-loving, happy-go-lucky guy.
He is.
Is that the fact?
Yeah. He can't help himself. He loves laughing. He's a big laugher. He enjoys himself. He enjoys what he does. And that's important. I think that is really the key to his success. He just enjoys it. I mean, he's a hard worker, but he enjoys what he does so much. It's almost unbelievable. And he likes making people laugh. He doesn't like people around him being sad. And if he's to be the life of the party, he will. But he doesn't come to you like that. He'll just walk into a room and just sit down. But by the time he leaves, he would have made an impact. And I think that is what has been his success so far.
I mean, despite the fun-loving character that we see, I get the distinct impression, having been around him for the last week to 10 days, that he's in serious mode in terms of this legendary status that he's chasing in the Olympic Stadium.
But I think he knows what his challenges are in terms of almost to satisfy the world. People have bought tickets specifically for him. I think he got a first taste when he had to carry the flag and walk that 1 mile stretch. But he says it has humbled him. His teammates all rally around him. But let me tell you, that guy, he will break a king into laughter. So on the business side, he knows, because that's what he does. He doesn't do anything else at this juncture. I mean, he has some businesses and stuff, but that's critical to everything else in terms of the success of him and his businesses. And I think what he does, he sits down and thinks to himself, okay, I gotta just do my best. When I think of the reach, I mean, the Australian papers, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, who makes the front page of the Vietnam paper? You know, I think after Berlin, Beijing and Berlin, when we checked, you know, 220 major newspapers had him on their front page. I mean, that doesn't happen, you know, very often. So I think he knows. He's very aware. He knows when to have fun, when not to have fun, kind of a thing. But
all being equal, what's it going to be like for you then? Being in the stadium, I would presume, when he's not in that final on August the 5th.
Oh, I have no idea. Oh dear. I think it varies from time to time. I'm pretty confident. I feed off a lot of his vibe. His parents are here. We have a small team, and I think that, you know, we're going to see him obviously before, and we'll catch on the vibe that he's going to have, and then we just follow. But in terms of his leadership style and ability, he will say, guys, all is well.
Good.
You know? And so, I mean, we don't burst. It's not a bursting with confidence. We just know he's going to give it his best shot. His competition is from home, if I may put that in, and that's important. And, you know, for Usain to really be here, I think he has achieved his legendary status. I wouldn't tell him this, of course. But for him to be compared to everything else in one sport, but as a world sport, that's invaluable, you know. So it's not that difficult.
Okay. Just going back to next week, obviously, the Caribbean Export Development Agency. What would you expect to have executed, completed by the end of that forum?
Certainly a template for sports management in the region. The Caribbean has produced a significant amount of elite athletes over the last couple of years. It is important that it becomes a way of life for them. So one, we'd like a template for economic development. Two, how we develop our content. I think Caribbean athletes and some of the other athletes outside of the first world, they get abused because of incorrect information. The Caribbean has to devise a way to prepare its own content through, I mean, social media is expanding, but traditional media can play a role. Also, strong areas of economic development. So we need to make it an industry, not just on performance. You know, things like reproducing our own magazines. We need to go back to those days because people will advertise and bring in partners that will develop the industry. And when you look at Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Bahamas, St. Kitts, those are 5 countries that have offered tremendous amount of exposure that now needs to be transferred. So in terms of a template for how business can be done, which is essentially what the business of sport does. And then, you know, our coaches are good, or we have strong technical, because that's a lot, because we're English based in the region, academics is a big thing, even today. And so we have a strong technical capacity. We can do pockets of that, we can export that. And I think when an agency like the Caribbean Export takes that on, one, it adds credibility and it justifies the existence of this kind of pocket in the region.
Okay. You touched on something there. There was a time when Jamaican athletes would have to leave the island to go to America to develop their talents, etc., etc. The fact that that's happening less so now, that's a positive thing, surely.
Absolutely. The athletes that went to the United States were prepared for the collegiate system there, and we found the transition was not as easy to professional. However, in the last 10 to 15 years, 2 major clubs in Jamaica have really just separately but joined forces to grow their athletes at home, and it has been incredible. When you look at the medal checks, the clubs there, outside of probably people like Veronica Campbell, Karen Stewart, certainly from Jamaica, the rest of the medals have come from athletes that have trained in Jamaica. What that means is that it is justifying the structure, and some kind of success can be added. Even stuff like that can be a good selling point. Now with the success of even Alia Atkinson and so on, you know, the existence of swimming pools, how do you live on an island and not being able to swim? So the program Swim Jamaica, for example, is gonna be boosted, as soon as the Olympics is over. It exists, but we like success. So because this has happened, there's going to be an incredible amount of push towards that. However, we have to be careful. There are some islands that have sports that can earn money, some can do networking, and you have recreation. I think governments just need to concentrate and decide what will bring the best bang for your buck, and then what others can do that everybody can participate. And then it feeds down. I mean, politically speaking, it's good to have a winner, but at the same time, you're talking about protecting the residents of your respective countries. I mean, basic physical education tells you that if everybody's healthy, you have longer lives, that kind of a thing, and so on. But we have to go back to the grassroots. Teach phys ed in schools, have people appreciate what phys ed offer. Not everybody can be a star, but you can have support in the industry. There's so many career options in sports. I mean, I could name tons of them. Journalist, a writer, a manager. So we need to prepare our industry. And the Caribbean, with just 7 million in terms of population, if we have 10% of that going back into sports.
All good.
Exactly.
What message could or would you give to women trying to get into sports administration and higher? Because obviously sport, even though it's changed over the years, is seen as this male bastion of dominance, and here you are heading up what you're heading up. What positive message could you give to women that want to get into sport?
Well, in the Caribbean, it's really not that a problem.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was probably more a UK scenario.
Right, or even the United States.
Yeah.
But international federations have this almost affirmative action where there should be a balance, and they're including, even at the international level, I think it's 20% women must be on the boards, which includes male-dominant sports like volleyball, football, for example. FIFA has that rule, you must have a woman or so on the board. And it's important. It becomes a little hard. I'm not going to fool myself. It's harder for a woman to get involved in sport, even if she knows her stuff. But don't stop, because there are so many things you could do outside of what the men do. The men like to be the presidents. That's fine. I mean, but internationally, once you're recognized, I don't think it's a big deal. We have a lot of women physical education teachers. They're nurturers and so on. So they continue to provide support. Just figure out a way to get paid for it. And I think from the economic template, I think that will work out fine. But women have to work just a little harder than men. I know we live in a patriarchal society, but I don't like to use the female card. My experience has been pretty decent. Of course, I do get messed around by the guys, but it's not a big deal. That's my experience, however.
Great.